What's up, guys? Kevin from the KO Sports Corner. We are here with a full panel today. We have John Rodriguez of All Marlins. We have Sean here, Miami Sports Minute. You can see him on Fansided on Call to the Pen, as well as all his articles and his recap, which will be dropping or might have already dropped by the time this podcast is out. Breaking news: Don Mattingly mutually parting ways with the Miami Marlins. I'm going to pull up the quotes from Donnie and Kim Eng. So this first one was from owner Bruce Sherman. We are fortunate to have had Don Mattingly leading our team on the field over the last 7 years. He has represented the Marlins, our players, our fans, and the South Florida community with unmatched dignity and pride. Over the course of our recent conversations with Don, we both agreed to not pursue a new contract for the 2023 MLB season. That the time is right for a new voice to lead our clubhouse. He will depart with the most wins and most games managed in franchise history, and we are proud of Don's many accomplishments, including winning the National League Manager of the Year in 2020 when he guided the Marlins to the postseason after 16 years of absence. Keep in mind, he also has the most losses in Marlins history for any Marlins manager, but that is due just to the fact that he also has the most games managed. So Don Mattingly then follows it up by saying, "Today I'm announcing that I will not be seeking a contract extension with the Miami Marlins. After meeting with Mr. Sherman and discussing with Kim Eng, all parties agreed that it is time for a new voice for the organization. I am proud and honored to have served as manager of the Marlins for the past 7 years and have enjoyed my experiences and relationships I have developed within the organization. I look forward to spending time with my family in Evansville and to any further and future endeavors." So that was Don Mattingly. Then he goes on to, in this post-game presser, saying he does not want to sit on a couch. He feels good. He feels in the right mind to go out there and keep going. Maybe he goes and gets another managerial role. I'm rooting for that. Or maybe we see Don Mattingly back in Miami as maybe a front office role in the advisory role, maybe. So Mattingly ended his Marlins tenure with a 437, 583 record. Once again, 7 years with the team, one playoff appearance in 2020. Many see that as a fake season, some don't. The closest he was to 500 in a full major league season was in 2016, his first year, where he went 79 and 82, went through an ownership change, stayed through the highs and the lows, and was liked by many in the clubhouse and many outside. I can tell you firsthand, Don Mattingly is a first-class man, just on and off the field, great guy to talk to. Very knowledgeable of the game itself and how it works. I'm going to go to John here first. Just when you saw that tweet from Jordan McPherson and Craig Mish that Don Mattingly was going to be departing from Miami at the conclusion of the 2022 season, what went through your mind? And just now your thoughts that Don Mattingly will no longer manage the Marlins and we will be seeing a new manager for the first time since 2015. So almost 10 years.
Yeah, well, I actually woke up to it. I woke up to the news. Mattingly was departing and, parting ways with the team. And honestly, you just kind of go through what he went through as manager. He's been through it all. He went through the fire sale. He went through Jose passing. And speaking of Jose, it's the 6-year anniversary of his passing. So, it's a very heartfelt day. And as I've mentioned, I think it shows it on this picture. No, It doesn't. But Donnie has this little wristband that's given to him by Jose himself, and he's kept it every single day that he's managed the game for this team. And it hits home sometimes, right? Like, this is a guy who went through it all. He took those days like a complete champion. He went through the fire sale. He brought the team to the playoffs, but we're entering a stage in time when the team looks very questionable, and some of the decisions that were made this year in particular were a bit also questionable. So it kind of puts you to think he was on the hot seat, and given his contract details and whatnot, I guess it was coming. But, this is the guy who brought stability to the managerial role for the Marlins. Remember, the Marlins, before Mattingly, they cruised around managers. They went from Freddie Gonzalez to Jack McKeon to Eduardo Rodriguez, and then they had Guillen, then they went to Redmond, and then Jennings. So they've been all over the place with managers, and that happened all in the span of 5 years. So Mattingly really brought stability to the managerial staff of the team. He's been here since 2015, and yeah, for what he went through, I tip my cap off to him, and I'm really happy that the team decided to part ways, and they did it in a very professional manner. I really hope Mattingly gets a job elsewhere. He's a great guy, and yeah, that's my take on it.
Sean, just if you want to follow up, same question, your thoughts when you first saw the news, and not only what this means to Donnie, but usually when there's a new manager entering, which we'll get into some options, early options, way too early we could call them, just the staff around Donnie. So this would include James Rouse and Mel Stoudemire Jr. You also have Marcus Timms, Keith Johnson, Alfred Enrique, just that staff. What does that mean? What does this departing of Donnie mean for those guys around him?
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw the news this morning, I mean, I'll be honest, I bought a ticket. I wanted to. I'm down here from out of town. I wanted to see him manage one more time. He's done. You have to tip your cap to what he's given to the organization. That kind of time investment, as John noted, everything that he's been through, and we can't imagine how that 2016 season ended, what that must have been like for the players. Today is the anniversary of Jose's passing. So he weathered that and then got dealt a rebuild, right? So 2 seasons where definitely was padding the losses on that career resume. He was not supposed to win for 2018 and 2019. So that's tough for any manager to handle. And he just, kept plowing ahead. And it probably is time for a change and a different voice, but at the same time, he had a lot that he had to weather, and a lot of questionable roster decisions, were made too. It's certainly not all on Donnie with some of the players he had to work with the last couple of seasons. As for what it means for the rest of the coaching staff, and with another manager coming in, I mean, that's kind of one of the easy fixes, right? For to explain away a team that's been struggling, has been underachieving. That we got to replace the coach. And maybe you do. And I think with a lot of the supporting staff, you could see a lot of turnover. Coaches do like to bring in their own guys and their own players or personnel that they've worked with in the past to help them out when they set up a new managing run, mixing football terms today, head coach and manager. They're making when a new manager takes over. But obviously the one coaching question there is Mel Stoudemire, and I think that's the shoe that everyone's waiting to see how that drops, because you absolutely want him to stay. But beyond that, I think you'll certainly hitting coach. I think that's gonna. I think maybe it for Marcus Thames, but everyone else, we'll see. James Rouston, our offensive coordinator, when he was brought in, that hasn't seemed to have really gone to script. But I want Mel to stay. Drop the bag for Mel. It's my take on the rest of the staff, and hopefully he does so.
Yeah, you just look at what Mel's done, especially just looking at the 2 best examples here, or 3: Trevor Rogers, Braxton Garrett, and Jesus Luzardo. He's been amazing. Trevor Rogers basically calls him his father at this point. I mean, that's what he's been saying a couple times. And the last thing I want to mention on Donnie is just, he said he kind of described his tenure as disappointment. He wanted to rebuild this thing the right way from bottom up. He really wasn't able to do it in terms of the managerial side of things. And you really can't blame him. Sean mentioned a lot of questionable roster moves were made. You look at 2021, they were calling up Devin Marrero over a guy like Bryson Bergman at the time, who should have been a major leaguer. And now you look this year, they really did not want to call up Max Meyer. And when they did, not at the good time. And he's now with Tommy John along with Anthony Bender and a couple of other guys. So we'll see what happens. We wish Donnie the best. Hopefully he does return in some form to the organization. It's going to be very weird going into the ballpark next year and just seeing a different guy talking to a different manager. And now with that different manager, I want to get into some way too early replacement options. John and I put up a list. Sean, I guess we'll get more of your reaction towards these, and you could also mention a couple names if you have in mind. But let's get into the most obvious name. The biggest name that will be out there, we assume, will be Joe Espada, bench coach for the Houston Astros. He is bilingual, so that right there fits the Miami need, with Miami bringing in a lot of Latin American guys with Soler, Avi Garcia, Brian De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez, another example there.
He's also been with the team. He's been a part of the Marlins organization. He was the third base coach 10 years ago or so, and he's a young mind. And me personally, looking at this team, I think they need to be driven by a young mind of some sort. Maybe like as you mentioned, bilingual. This team has a lot of specifically Dominicans and other heritages and countries. So I guess that kind of blending everybody together. I feel like there was a bit of division in the clubhouse this year. I think it was pretty evident in a couple of things that happened, and I think bringing that sense of unity together really gets the guys going again. So yeah, I'm all for Espada.
And if you're looking for Yankee ties as well, since that's been the trend lately, he has them. He was, I believe, either pitching coach or bench coach, but just look at what Houston's doing, cheat free, or trash can free, and they're doing very well. They're in first place in their in their division, and they may make the World Series once again this upcoming year because of how good they are. You really can only, Espada has to have some type of, you have to give him credit for what he's been doing there on that end. So hopefully he is definitely someone that the Marlins will look at and maybe bring in as well. He's been part of coaching carousels before. He's been interviewed by other teams, but I want to get into the other obvious candidate here that we have to at least give a shout out to. John, I think it was Sean who mentioned him when they brought him in, James Rowson. You have to give him at least a mention, at least an interview, more of a due diligence type thing in my eyes. Sean, just what would be your take on the possibility of Rowson entering? Remember last season, Rowson managed the team a little bit, and many liked it, many didn't. There was a lot of mixed opinion there. I believe that was when Donnie was out for around 10 games. So just your thoughts on the possibility of bringing a guy like Rowson. In my opinion, this really wouldn't change much from the current state of the team, just seeing how long he's been with the team right now. Maybe he's just a younger mind, I guess, would make this would be the change here.
And I think the best argument with Rowson is, since he's been around, we got to hope he's buddies with Mel, right? That could be keep some continuity with the pitching coach would be certainly one credit to him. Rowson seemed to be a very buzzworthy name when he first came over a couple years ago. He had all that success with the Twins, and then you were kind of wondering if he was going to be that kind of manager in waiting, right? And then he did get his trial, like you said. I think it was when Mattingly was out with COVID. Is that what it was? Then he had to come in for a bit, and so he got his feet wet with that. So that would seem that, I guess, the most likely in-house on the MLB roster option for them to go with. And I do just think it's interesting that we're saying, and I would agree that we kind of need a younger mind now, and a presence that the players could connect with. But if we go back to the last manager hire, it was almost, I think the sense was the opposite. I mean, we had shuffled through some guys. Mike Redmond didn't quite work out. That would have at that point kind of been youngish, former player, connecting with the clubhouse, and then. Then after the Dan Jennings travesty, they needed to get the most veteran, experienced, grizzled baseball manager that they could, come up with, and they got Mattingly, in the door. And now we're pivoting again to, it's got to be a young guy, it's got to be someone who's on the player's level. And I just hope that this time that process works, and that it is someone who could successfully, connect but also compete and manage the roster more successfully.
All right, so I want to go to John's first name. I actually have a good amount of names. John, I don't know how many you have, but one that's not Joe Espada, so go for it.
I was looking through a couple lists of names and candidates, and I crossed over one, former Marlin, and I'm not too sure what are the chances of this happening exactly, but I thought of Martin Prado. He's a guy who's been in the league for a long time. He came to the Marlins. He spent a good chunk of his final seasons of his career here. Retired in 2019. He's been a part of the brand new ownership. This guy, he was a leader. He was like the pre-Miggy Rowe. He was trying to kind of pave way for Miggy Rowe to kind of take the helm as the captain. So given that he's got that bit of leadership, maybe not as manager, but maybe he joins the coaching staff, or maybe as an advisor in some capacity. I think he really does deserve a spot, or at least a mention in that, he kind of played a good role in the organization. And if it's for a manager, once again, another young mind, retired like 4 years ago, going to 5?
2019, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not opposed to a Martin Prado signing.
The only thing with Martin, I think, would be just the lack of coaching or managerial experience.
Yeah.
I think when you look at what you're looking for in the next Marlins manager, yes, the bilingual, it's there. That's there. He would be able to get along with both sides. He knows the ownership. He was a former Marlin himself under both ownerships. He was a pretty damn good baseball player. He was okay with the Marlins, a solid player at best. It's just a lack of manager. And really, he may have had a role with another team at some point. It's been since 2019, we're in 2022 and still not back in the game of baseball whatsoever. It's just a little bit there. I agree with you. This would be a great name to talk about, but it's just to the point where it's just a guy who hasn't been back in baseball since 2019. And you would have thought maybe at this point he would have decided to come back, or at least join some type of ownership group or an advisory role, advisor to the general manager, or something like that. So, Sean, I want to get your take on Prado quickly.
I think that could be pretty interesting, but I agree. I just think they're going to get someone that they want a young mind, but they want some coaching experience. I don't think they still kind of want to contend. At least I'm just going off of the Sherman rant about the state of the team that he said we're competing in 2023. So if you're going to say that, then I think they'll go for someone with just at least a little bit of coaching experience. As much as I would love to see Martin come back to the organization in some capacity, because he was just a champ through and through, did everything right. Before Rojas kind of took that mantle, in the fans' eyes, like Prado was kind of the driving force in a lot of ways, particularly when the team kind of changed over from 17 and 18.
Yep. And before we keep going, managers, we have to mention this. Bruce Sherman, you mentioned that name. He will be involved with the search of the next manager. So very, very interesting. They're a guy who's been very hands-off in terms of bringing in players, bringing in a coach, or any of that sort of way. This was all Derek Jeter. This will be the first time that not only Kim Eng, but Bruce Sherman will be involved with the search for this manager. And John, before I present you my first name, how much does this mean to you that a guy like Bruce Sherman may start being a little bit more hands-on with the organization in terms of players, manager search now, and just everything around it, besides just sitting there next to home, sitting right behind home plate next to the Marlins dugout, watching these games?
Yeah, you said it. Sitting right behind the dugout, watching 9 strikeouts a day, is really painful. So the fact that he's gonna now be a little bit more hands-on with the team is really good, because I think for me personally, when Derek Jeter departed, my biggest question was, hey, what's the direction of the team? Because at least with Jeter, regardless of the decisions being good or bad, there was a direction. He had guys he wanted. There was a vision, at least, in that sort of way. Sherman has just been all talk most of the time, as we've seen, with the, we're gonna compete, we have money, we're gonna spend it, that type of stuff. But I think now we're gonna see Sherman kind of grow into a legitimate owner. He's gonna be, hey, I'm gonna get myself more involved into this. The fans aren't happy, and one of the team promise since day one has been, we're gonna turn the ship around. With Loria, it's been 15 years of the same crap every single year. So now with Sherman stepping in and assisting Kim Eng, as now she has full
Full control.
power, I guess, or control. Yeah. So now with him stepping in and giving some of his pinpoints as well as to what he would want, there could be some sort of, connection between the two and finding the next best suitor for the Marlins manager position. So I'm happy that, Sherman has kind of grown into that. And if he's committed to, actually turning this franchise around, I'm all for it. Anything for the better.
And I'm glad you mentioned Jeffrey Loria. I mean, some may not be glad to hear that name, but this was the last. Loria was a guy who was very, very involved in terms of the baseball side of things. He loved the game. He was very involved. You could see how involved he was. Sean, any fears now after seeing what Loria did? Are there any fears in terms of what Sherman could do if he becomes a little bit hands-on in terms of the baseball side of things?
I think any change for the better, because what's been happening hasn't really worked. If he brings his wallet with him when he wants to be more involved, then that should be that can be a bit of a positive. Yeah, but certainly we have plenty of examples of Loria thinking he knew a little too much and throwing money in the wrong places, and then the team being saddled with that. On the player acquisition side. But in terms of coaching hires, I think getting Mattingly was the right move at the time, and we were happy that Donnie was here for the most part. The couple, some whiffs in there too, but I don't know if I ever thought any of the manager decisions were disastrous. Actually, I thought a lot of the manager dismissals were disastrous during Loria's time. So I guess I don't have a ton of worry about that. The only thing I will add is that I still wonder if maybe we're leaving out an unknown middleman. That Sherman's saying he'd be involved, but I still wouldn't surprise me if one of the things that he does is bring in, maybe not a straight CEO, but some other hire on there, to add a little, sizzle, to the off season, because I'll say it all off season. We might not be able to afford to give Trey Turner $30 million a year, but we can probably afford to give some flashy executive who fans would be like, oh, okay, awesome. $5 million a year. Give him the Jeter contract too.
Right.
Sit in the front office and help kind of be a baseball czar. So I'm still kind of expecting that to happen, I guess, and there to be another voice in the decision.
Yeah. So
I'd be surprised if they hire someone quickly.
Yeah. So what has been said is that Kim won't have a boss, so CEO in this case. Jeter's position looks like it won't be replaced anytime soon. Gary Denbo's position, on the other hand, which would be what you've been mentioning, Sean. In this case, that middleman, that is expected to be replaced at some point, and it is a very, very important position because you saw everything Denbo did from the time he arrived in Miami until, I guess, the end of his tenure, because he really didn't do much the final 6 months. It was mentioned on Craig Mish's pod that really those final 6 months, if you asked him if he had any say in anything, he would have said no, and he really didn't have any impact there. So this is Kim Eng's show. That is the one last thing I want to make clear. This is Kim Eng making every single move from now on. It is all Kim Eng. She will have this offseason all to herself. Yes, Bruce Sherman will be involved with the managerial search, but we don't know what else he will be involved in. Maybe this is the start of the hands-on as we were talking about here.
Yeah.
But let's move on quickly through these replacement options for Don Mattingly. The next one is Mark Pryor, Dodgers pitching coach. Sean, do you think this is something that they would look at? Kershaw, Buehler, Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, looking at that rotation, how dominant it's been this season. Is this maybe a no because of the hitting side of things where Miami's mainly struggling, and you kind of keep Mel, let's say they keep Mel, you really shouldn't be going after a pitching coach?
I think that's it. If we find out in the next few weeks that Mel's on his way out, that Mel's going to follow Donnie into the sunset or the next opportunity, or just going to leave the organization, then I think there'll be a bit of a vacuum, and I can see them going after someone like that. But if Stoudemire is going to stay, and we all hope that he does, then I think they would want to go after, kind of have the yin and yang there on the bench and get someone who might spark the offense a little more. So that would seem like just doubling down even more on our pitching advantage.
Mhm.
John, any comments on Pryor, and then who's your next name?
Oh, terrific pitcher in his career. First of all, I just want to mention that.
He was a pretty good pitcher,
Yeah, he really was. But coaching side, I agree with Sean in the sense that you are doubling down on your pitching expertise and surplus and everything that the Marlins have done up to this point with the pitching staff and their core for the most part. And like you said, I do think that there is a side in the hitting perspective that is kind of missing still. So I want to see them attack a little more on a all-around type of guy, a guy who kind of works with both sides of the spectrum.
Who's your next name, John?
My next name is one that I've seen a lot of fans mention. Not a younger guy, but I want to throw this name out there just to start a little conversation.
I think I know who you're going.
He was fired this year.
Oh, never
by
mind.
The Angels. I'm gonna go with Joe Madden. This is a guy who's experienced, a guy who's brought similar teams like the Marlins. If we look back at the Tampa Bay Rays back when he managed those clubs, it was a similar scenario with the Rays, a team that wasn't all too flashy. Longoria was coming up. There was David Price and James Shields, that type of era of the Rays. And a little bit before as well, he took them to the World Series, and a little bit later with the Cubs, won a World Series. So he's got that track record in his resume. This is a guy who has been a champion in the past. And not only that, to his credit, this is a guy who kind of lifts up the clubhouse. When the team is down in spirit, he comes in, he tries his best, he tries to put up a little show, get the guys' emotions flowing, get them, ready. This is a young team at the end of the day. This is something many people need to realize. It's a young team, and if you got a manager who's got that type of energy, push them, get them going, this might turn the tide around. And I like Madden. He's a good guy, really good guy. He's a fun dude, and maybe this could work. Maybe.
That's the key word. Maybe. This guy, as you mentioned, older guy. I would say he's older than Don Mattingly. I'm not quite sure. Maybe
I think he is. Yes.
I'll let you search that one up there for us. But I don't know, man. That's like when you're looking for the next Marlins manager, I want him to be at least under 50 in terms of just longevity. The longevity
he's older.
Provide. He's older than exactly.
Yeah.
So, Sean, quickly your thoughts on the Joe Madden possibility, and I know and that has been mentioned. I've seen it around Marlins Twitter, but I stay quiet on these things. And so your thoughts on the possibility of Joe Madden, and then I'll go with my next name, who is a former Marlin.
Okay.
I mean, that's, and I may know who you're going to say with that, but for Madden, that's kind of one of those ones that you could see Sherman wanting to be more involved doing, right, and bringing, paying that kind of contract to get a Madden in, because my understanding is that the Marlins under Sherman kind of has this image of Marlins becoming the next Rays, right? Of, where we're not going to break the bank, but we're going to have this smart front office and these smart coaches, and we're going to analytic our way to victory, and and he's and Madden's kind of the poster manager for when the Rays came up and were doing that. And since we can't have Kevin Cash, he might decide to go get Joe Madden of Cubs title glory and success with the Rays prior to that. So that wouldn't surprise me if he makes that phone call. Anyway, but if that actually is the best fit for this roster and this clubhouse, I think that's very debatable. But I definitely think it's going to cross his mind. But,
so the next name I wanted to mention was a former Marlin. He is currently with the Cleveland Guardians. I mentioned this name to John. Chris Valaika, Cleveland Guardians hitting coach. Maybe he's a good option. I don't know. Former Marlin. Look where the Guardians are now. They just clinched the AL Central. So they're making the playoffs. They're going to be there. Sean, John, whoever wants to go first, your thoughts on this possibility? This may be in that same realm of the Martin Prado situation where you would throw him into maybe third base, maybe you bring him in as the hitting coach, assuming that Marcus Thames is gone for the year. You would have to obviously offer him a little bit more money to come back to Miami, just assuming he is going to be stepping into that same role. So your thoughts on the possibility of Chris Valaika? I'll go with Sean first.
Hey, you gotta love what Cleveland's done with hitters over the last few years. So he's got a little more at doing a coaching job right now. Obviously, he brings a little more experience than Prado does, and that's kind of all I think we were looking for there. So it's got to be some coaching experience. It doesn't necessarily need to be years in the manager chair or anything like that. So that's another organization that I mentioned before that maybe the Marlins kind of want to go the Rays approach. That the Guardians would be another way to go in terms of being smart with money but getting big return out of less investment. So I think that's interesting. I think that could possibly work.
John, same question to you.
As for me, Chris Valaika, that's a name that I haven't heard in a long time, as they say. But yeah, he's done wonders with the Guardians, a team that was projected to finish dead last in the division, or at least on top of Detroit in the standings. He's done miracles for the Guardians. They finished first. They're in the playoffs. They're doing good. But I see this more as an optimal option for their hitting coach position, which is not in the best of hands right now, I'd say. So if they're going to try to drift away from the Yankees, background approach, now that Jeter's gone, Tim's was the former Yankees, guy as well. So if they want to bring in, Valaika, I think he's a good option. And I think if we're talking another option for hitting coach, I want to shout out Phil Plantier from AAA, Jacksonville.
Yep.
He's done a good job with those hitters down there in AAA. And he could get himself a little promotion over to the big leagues and become the Marlins' next hitting coach for 2023.
Yeah, that is also another long overdue promotion there in terms of a AAA guy. We saw it last year with Al Pedrique, who was the manager for the Jumbo Shrimp and is now third base coach, yes, and infield coach. So we'll see the sixth round with the organization. He's made some questionable decisions there this season. We've all seen that. But Phil Plantier, you could he's very much loved. You could ask Alex Carver, Fish on the Farm. He likes him a lot. You could kind of credit him for Nick Fortes, Charles LeBlanc, who is the 2022 AAA MVP for the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. Then you just look at AFL. He was the hitting coach for the Arizona Fall League in 2021. Credit him with Gabriel Moreno a little bit. He was their top catching prospect in Toronto. Yusniel Diaz, I believe he was part of the Manny Machado trade, I want to say. He made it up to the big leagues this season, and obviously J.J. Bleday, Peyton Burdick were up there this year, Charles LeBlanc. So, John, do you have another name you want to add here?
There was two. I'm not too sure about these, but I just want to throw them out as potential options, if you will. One of them being a former Marlins manager himself, Joe Girardi. This is another guy who's in the market. Personally, not too much of a fan, but this sparks conversation among fans. Girardi has a career and a background and a track record of being a winner. He's had consecutive winning seasons with the Yankees from 2008 through 2017, and he won the World Series in 2009. But then again, we're talking about very good teams. The Yankees were very, very good teams throughout those years. He then went to manage the Phillies, which he did okay. He had 2 seasons under 500 with them, and then he got fired. But with the Marlins, that 1-year stint, he won the Manager of the Year. I don't know if they're going to value that too much. Kind of ended in a very sour taste, when he left the organization. If many fans remember how that happened. Another person I want to bring out, another kind of old guy, Ron Renicky. He was a Brewers manager, I want to say, with the old logo through the Prince Fielder years, Ricky Weeks type of era. He brought the Brew Crew to the playoffs. He had a couple seasons over 500. I'm looking at managers who have shown that they could move those teams to to that level. And the Brewers, a team who has always been kind of under the radar through the years, if you've noticed. They've never that much in the spotlight. So I kind of made that little connection with the Marlins. Maybe Ron Renicky could kind of bring a little bit of his part into the team. But
my next guy is Ron Washington, Atlanta Braves infield coach. I like Ron Washington, but then it goes back to you're just gonna get maybe a little bit of better version of Don Mattingly, older guy. He has to be older than Don Mattingly. There's no way he's younger than him. No offense to Ron Washington, but this guy is very, very good. He's been in the coaching circle for, I want to say, many, many years already. I know he interviewed for the Oakland A's position last year, but he did not get it. Huh?
He's 10 years older.
Donnie's what, 71, Donnie?
Donnie's 61. He's 70. 9.
Ron Washington, I thought he was older, no offense to him, but he's really mindful. You could really look at Austin Riley. That's the main player I want to look at. Who's one of the worst defenders at third base, and this year he may be a Gold Glove candidate, maybe, or just look at the improvements and the strides he's made. He was an all-star. He was an all-star selection. He wasn't a starter. He got snubbed from the initial all-star selections, but Sean, I immediately saw you glow up there when I mentioned Ron Washington. So your thoughts on that possibility? It kind of we don't talk about when you think of Washington, yes, great option, but when we look at what we want in the Marlins manager, he's not under 50 and he's not the young guy we would like, but he's part of a winning organization with the Atlanta Braves, who won the World Series just last season, so he knows what it's all about, what winning is all about, and he's really good.
Yeah, definitely doesn't fit the young mold, right? And yeah, I was glowing up when I saw you half bite on Ron Renicky. I was like I know what Ron you're thinking of, but Washington's been in the game here for a very long time. It would be, it was the Rangers, right? That he was with
yes
prior. Yeah. Okay. So that was him, and for those very good Rangers teams, as well. And now he's having success there with the Braves at third base. So that would be another one of those big veteran names to bring in and be like, look, it's a winner. Be happy, fan base. Like this guy can do it. He's been to the World Series. He's been deep in the playoffs. So you could see that connection working, and he's obviously still very effective at coaching.
Yep.
Another one other name I thought of when you were mentioning the Brewers, John, was I heard some of this going around on Twitter the last couple of weeks that maybe the Brewers, if their season doesn't end the way they like it to, are going to go with decide they need to move on from Craig Counsell. Which would,
that is something I'll let you go on and then I'll mention something.
Which that would be that would does it necessarily quite fit the super young guy mode, maybe not, but that would definitely make a big contingent of the fan base happy for that tie to former Marlin glory days, and former Marlins, and bringing one in, but with an impressive managing track record. That could be something I could see them pursuing if Milwaukee makes that choice too.
Keep in mind
to move on from him.
Yeah, we got to the ones listening or watching. Keep in mind, the season hasn't ended, so we don't know what managers will get fired. At the moment, we know Joe Girardi was fired, Joe Madden was fired, Chris Woodward was fired. I'm definitely missing another one. Don Mattingly will be mutually parting ways.
Jay Stingler, right? They parted ways or something.
Montoya, right?
Montoya was fired.
Yeah.
And Jay Stingler was also fired, yes, from the Padres. So those are the names at the moment that are fired. Those will all be having head coaching vacancies. And I know when I mentioned Montoya, or you mentioned him, your face glowed, John. Why would that be a good option? He had a lot of good, but a lot of bad in Toronto. I heard a lot of negative things from his time in Toronto.
He's also particularly young. First of all, when you brought him up, he's a couple of years younger than Mattingly. He's bilingual. He's Puerto Rican. He's from the area. He's a Floridian. He's been with the Blue Jays. He managed pretty good Blue Jays teams. He kind of turned the ship around for them. And hey, if he could turn them around, they could turn us around. Hopefully, that's the hope, I guess, if they bring him over. But if I'm looking at his track record in 2021, finished 91-71. That was the exact same record the Marlins won the World Series with. Like, I guess if the organization wants to bring that kind of into our heads, in 2022, the Blue Jays parted ways with Montoyo, and Montoyo left the Blue Jays over 500. So it's not like it was like if he was, underperforming maybe to their extent in how they wanted to work. But hey, they were over 500. The Marlins were over 500 how many times this year? I think we're going back to April. If that's when they won their 5 games in a row. Remember that run?
7. Come on, give them some
7 games. But yeah, but I want to give another shout out here. Since you mentioned Ron Washington, and yes, he has much more managerial experience than this person I'm going to name. Another person with the same age, and Marlins fans love him. Perry Hill, man. Bring back Bones.
You're right.
Bring back Bones. I love that guy. Very good guy. He loves the organization. He's pretty active with the fans. He loves his team. He loves being a part of it. He's a champion. 103. Very good infield coach. Very good first base coach. Why not give him a shot?
Right.
And especially if they want to make the connection now with Jeter gone, kind of want to bring those old guys back. I felt like there was a bit of separation with the old guys, and it started with 97, the 97 celebration. They brought the champions over, so you start to see a little bit more involvement with this new direction and regime under Sherman and Eng.
And they're already planning for the 30th anniversary, which will be the week against the Yankees. So I will definitely be there to watch Aaron Judge, hopefully if he's still a Yankee, hit a couple bombs and hopefully face off against Sandy Alcantara and see some of those former guys. But the Perry Hill would be nice. Perry Hill would be very nice. The last 2 names I will mention to wrap up managerial talk and then get into the World Baseball Classic, which we have a good amount of Marlins attending at the moment. Matt Quantrill of the Tampa Bay Rays is your bench coach. If you want to bring analytics to baseball, just look at Kevin Cash and how he's been doing with Tampa Bay. Get one of their guys. Why not? Matt Quantrill, he probably could enter that. He's relatively young. John, if you want to look up his age for me very quickly there. And then the final 2 names, I'll add one more. Obviously the one which is the pipe dream for all of us. You guys know who I'm talking about. Mr. Marlin, Jeff Conine, no longer with the FIU, so he's open looking for a job, as I believe it still says on his Twitter bio. So we'll see that, but that's the pipe dream that will never happen. And then finally, one that maybe he's watching, maybe he's not. Eli Sussman mentioned to us on Spaces, former Marlin 2022 Marlins legend Francisco Cervelli. He is currently the Padres catching coordinator. Sean, I see you a little glowing up there, so I'll get you on Francisco. But he knows the new regime very, very well. He doesn't know Kimeng, but he was good for the Marlins in 2020. He knows most of these guys currently on the roster, knows Miggy Rowe. He's bilingual, and look what he's done with Jorge Alfaro, kind of revived his career there in a way in San Diego. Now the guy who he is the designated walk-off guy. So Sean, those last 3 names I mentioned, if you want to just go quickly through them and your thoughts.
Sure. I mean, well, hey, with Cervelli, I was going to say it too. If you can get Jorge Alfaro to hit confidently, then I mean, you are the answer to the Marlins' offensive woes. Well, let's get him in the door. At least it's the hitting coach. Jeff Conine. I mean, that is the name that would drive up season ticket sales for this team more than anything.
Right.
If you were going to have Mr. Marlin out there managing the team, and he got that experience, right? He was coaching with FIU. That's enough to to sell that, and I would. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see it. Obviously grew up watching him. That would be so fun, but it's not not happening. It did not sound positive in an interview that I think Jeff did with Eli earlier in the season, and then. And I'm sorry, what was the 3rd name? I was just thinking.
Quantrill, Tampa Bay Rays assistant.
Kevin, 48 years old.
Who?
That guy.
Quantrill?
Yeah.
Falls into that mold.
it definitely meets the analytics mode, and that so taking a guy from Tampa definitely fits the let's be Tampa blueprint, and that's probably the most likely, I would say, of the three names you just mentioned. If I could throw one out, just since he's actively managing now as a substitute or interim guy, just wondering what you guys think of Miguel Cairo with the with the White Sox.
If he does not go back to, if he doesn't stay with Chicago, yes, that would be an amazing option. At this point, he really has so many options that there's really no real miss unless you go with a real miss option that we will find out hopefully in the coming weeks. I'm very excited for this offseason. Who would you mention?
Dan Jennings.
Oh no. Oh Lord. So
well, the equivalent then would just be Kim doing a Thanos and deciding she'll do it herself. Just taking over as manager.
Wearing the jersey, going out there. Hey, she'd be breaking barriers. First woman.
No, absolutely.
Don't give him ideas.
That'd be the Jennings move.
That would be the real Jennings move, yeah. World Baseball Classic. Let's talk about it as much as we can. So let's talk about the players that are confirmed. Ian Lewis will be playing for Great Britain. Jazz Chisholm will be wearing number 3 and playing shortstop for Great Britain. Richard Blyer, Ryan Lavarnway, and Jake Fishman will all be with Team Israel. Let's talk about the biggest one, Jazz Chisholm. Torn meniscus, stress back issues, I think it was a fracture. He's playing. He's going to play for Great Britain in the World Series. Not only play for Great Britain, but as he mentioned on the broadcast, he is going to play shortstop and wear number 3 for Great Britain. So, Sean, he's playing shortstop. Not only, this may be one of the best times to see Jazz Chisholm at shortstop, and can he do it at the level that the Marlins need to then have him there entering spring training 2023 with a new shortstop and maybe possibly a second baseman, which that could be LeBlanc if he keeps this going. Maybe you sign a second baseman. Maybe something has to happen here. Maybe all of a sudden they splash on Trey Turner and then you keep Jazz at second. There's so many options to look at, and John, do me a favor and go into Spot Track and check out the second baseman that will be a free agent there. Sean, your thoughts on Jazz Chisholm going to Great Britain to play third base? I mean, shortstop, I'm sorry.
Shots fired at Mickey Rowe, right? Well, Jazz is coming for short. First thing I thought of hearing that he's going to play and he's going to start is I go back to the last WBC and how that was just such a coming out party for Christian Yelich. He was on Team USA, the Marlins was like really kind of raised his game. He was one of the best hitters going for that team, and I'm really hoping we can see a similar thing from Jazz on this kind of stage. And definitely he was breaking out this season and he made the All-Star team, but if he could be healthier, hopefully by the time he heads out there for Great Britain, I'd really love to see him reach another level on there, as a defender, as a hitter, and just kind of really take over as a star on that stage. I think that would be a really exciting thing for the Marlins in 2023. As for short, I thought he was kind of settling in at second. I mean, I do kind of wonder if he could hold that down over the course of a full season. But if he could do it, then I'm all for trying it out. Whatever gives us the best lineup next season.
Before I go to John here, which I see him making a ton of faces, probably when opening that Spot Track page, yeah. Jazz Chisholm, he was first acquired by the Marlins, obviously by the Arizona Diamondbacks in that Zach Gallen trade. He was a shortstop. Went through the minor leagues. Miami expected this guy to be the future shortstop for the Miami Marlins. And when he came up to the big leagues, something happened that he just could not play shortstop at a proficient rate, or at least a consistent rate to keep him there. And they just moved him to second, and he's been really good there ever since. John, just mentioned to me the bigger names at second base and the ones that make sense for the Marlins, and then your thoughts on Jazz Chisholm going to the World Baseball Classic.
Well, according to Spot Track, the names that really pop up for second base is Hanser Alberto, Gene Segura, Adam Frazier, Donovan Solano, Cesar Hernandez, Ryan Goings. So we're looking at guys who are just not really there, right? Some are.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you
30.
here. Just keep in mind, these are the second basemen. You know, you could always
Yeah.
third, shortstop. Those guys probably could play second. So I don't know. Trey Turner maybe could play second, for example. Or you would just move Jazz to second, where he would be a lot more comfortable. You keep Trey at short. Just an example there. Xander Bogaerts, I don't know exactly who's playing at the moment.
Shortstop.
Shortstop, there you go. And then the other one is Rafael Devers, who obviously may not get the extension with Boston, and that team looks like it's going to head into some type of a rebuild, which we thought they were going to do a couple seasons ago, but they did not. So maybe they do it now. So just keep in mind that second base, although you may hear these names that are pretty thin and there's not much there, keep in mind that shortstop and third baseman could also move to second there. So John, Jazz Chisholm Jr., he is going to play for Great Britain. And then talk to us a little bit about Ian Lewis, who Rock Nation broke the news and then it transferred that over to Twitter.
Yeah, I love that you brought up Ian Lewis. He's a very slept on prospect. I love that guy. He's really good. I'm so excited for him. This is great. Not only for Great Britain making their first qualification to the World Baseball Classic, but this is really good for Team Bahamas, right? Maybe we'll see a Team Bahamas come in the future. If we can have Team Australia, Team Canada, who are both Commonwealths of the UK, maybe we could get Team Bahamas. It's just seemingly it looks like it's a country that is starting to kind of grow in baseball, and it all starts with Jazz. The kids are grabbing a bat, they're playing baseball because they're looking at Jazz. They admire Jazz. He's a flashy player, and that's just what the sport needs. You need to start looking into growth, and this is going to be fun. This is really fun. If this is what is going to bring in the future, a Bahamian team, it's going to be great. Playing shortstop, very experimental for Jazz. Going to see if he mans that position really well moving forward, especially with the injuries. Shortstop is a little bit more of an active position than second base was. So it's going to be very interesting to watch how he performs there with the injuries that he's suffered this year. Hopefully he starts to find himself a little bit more stability and health. And, maybe Miguel Rojas, maybe the Miguel Rojas era is over and it's time to move on. As same way we did with Mattingly, it's like, it's a complete retool. I think this is the legitimate retool season that the Marlins kind of went for last year that didn't really, I guess, go their way. But Ian Lewis, man, can't wait to see that guy play in the World Baseball Classic for Great Britain and Jazz. They're gonna tear it up. I can't wait for them.
It's going to be very fun, especially to have Marlins representatives. Hopefully they fall in the Pool D. Maybe we could see them there. Maybe they get into the second round and we'll see them in Miami. But moving on to Team Israel, I'm not going to get too much into these guys. They've all been there before. We've all seen what they've done. Blyer, LeVarn White, Fishman. LeVarn White at the moment would be the starting catcher. The only other Jewish catcher that I'm aware of that is in the major leagues is Garrett Stubbs, who we know very well after hitting a walk-off 3-run homer off of Tanner Scott. Then Jake Fishman made his debut this season, was a former Blue Jay. Then Richard Blyer, obviously we know him for what he's done, came into the 2020 season via trade. So I want to talk about the names to mention. You guys may have seen this on Twitter yesterday. Pablo Lopez, I spoke to him. I asked him about if there's any updates on the baseball classic, on the World Baseball Classic. We'd spoken to him a couple months prior. He'd love to pitch. And he kind of gave me some type of verbal way to say, yes, I'm going to pitch. And I'm going to look for the exact quote because someone on Twitter took it. But I want to get into some Sandy talk. You can see the poster behind me right there. Amazing poster, amazing there. So, Sean, the possibility of seeing Sandy Alcantara versus Pablo Lopez on opening night in Lone Depot Park. Packed out Lone Depot Park, and there he has it right there. We were both there last night, World Baseball Classic. How cool would that be, Sean? Just seeing two Marlins face off in a packed out Lone Depot Park. This will not be the good number of 11,000 fans that some may think is good, or the 7,000 fans we see each night.
Oh, it's like the nexus of the universe coming together. Sandy versus Pablo. That would be amazing. And definitely you hope the city would come out and and pack that stadium for that. We've seen good turnouts from the WBC here in the past, so I'm sure that would be just the same thing this time around. That'd be must-see TV for every baseball fan, not just Marlins fans. So I'd really love to see that matchup.
Yeah, so the quote from Pablo was, which someone on Twitter used on my end, if there are no restrictions of any kind, I'm going to be 100% available. So that is Pablo's status on pitching for Venezuela. That is going to be a very stacked team. That would include Framber Valdez, I'm pretty sure, Pablo Lopez. So those are just two names to mention there. And then obviously the DR unfortunately won't have Fernando Tatis. Obviously his suspension rolls into the World Baseball Classic, so he will not be available for that, which is a huge blow for maybe the best team in the Baseball Classic besides the USA. John, Sandy Alcantara, man. Let's talk a little bit Sandy before we wrap this thing up. He is the final player to mention here, and then I want to look up something quickly on Charles LeBlanc, which he may play for Team Canada. So, John, Sandy Alcantara, last night, 8 innings pitched. I believe he went 11 Ks, 1 walk, 3 hits, 1 run, 1 earned, which was a homer off of Joey Meneses, who the day prior to that game had mentioned that Sandy Alcantara is the toughest pitcher he's faced so far. So, John, give it to me, Sandy Alcantara, and then I'll go to Sean, who was at the game.
While you were asking me that, I was looking for a lock because I wanted to make sure that he locked that Cy Young Award. This is the first Marlins Cy Young Award winner in franchise history. I'm so proud of the guy. Started his campaign in 2022 with a bang, and he finished it off just as strong. And man, I'm so proud of him. 5 complete games. He's been a complete monster. He's just 1 strikeout away from 200. Would have wished he did it at home. Would have been very nice. I'm really happy that the fans came out to watch him one last time in 2022. Man, if I was there, if I could have shown up to that game, I would have given him a very nice curtain call. Man, he deserves it. He put up one hell of a season. Dontrell Willis, Kevin Brown, Josh Johnson, and Jose Fernandez are all tipping their cap because, man, he put up an absolutely incredible season this year for the Marlins. And despite them being an underperforming team, you just gotta respect the dude. He's, in my opinion, the captain of the Marlins.
He really is. I will tell you firsthand, this guy's the captain. But Sean, I not only want to ask you about Sandy, but I want to ask you about Sandy's Beach. You were there. I think it was the best turnout for Sandy's Beach this season by far. Many expecting this to be his final start in Lone Depot in 2022. It will not. He will pitch one more time. Final game of the season. So, Sean, tell me about Sandy and just the experience with Sandy's Beach.
Oh, I mean, it was awesome. It's been a long time since I've been at a Marlins game and just like in a section that was that bumping, that bouncing, that living and dying on every pitch. You know, it made it easy to forget that we're unfortunately we're having the season that we are, and then the position in the standings that the Marlins are, because just this was like playoff intensity. I mean, every pitch, every strike, flashing the K cards for every strikeout, and Sandy doesn't normally have a ton of strikeouts. And it came into 11 strikeouts. Yeah, against these Nationals. Yeah, that was awesome. We were all really wanted to see him, lock down that complete game. You get another one. We were greedy for it. The section was not happy. Some people maybe a little too unhappy when Floro came out.
There was some boos for Dylan Floro.
There was some boo, and I think a lot of it was just that we would have liked. John mentioned giving Sandy a curtain call. We wanted a chance to really cheer him one more time, for that effort in this season, and then it was just he's done. but certainly from the first inning through the 8th, we were all just jumping and screaming, and it's a fun section. Beach balls being batted around during every break in the action. It's definitely the coolest shirt. I think I've seen. Just list all the games he's appeared in this year, and I was going to tell John to knock on wood there after he said it was locked down, but it just really did seem just like the period of what's been a great season, and I don't see how they can take it away from him. I've got some scar tissue from Brown and Willis losing out, but I think it's safe. I think this is going to be it.
Yeah, 100%. And I believe he's had this locked up for a very, very long time. You, John, and Sean know exactly how I feel about Sandy and the Cy Young. He's had this locked up since the All-Star break, in my opinion, to be honest with you. There's been no better pitcher since Sandy, but the moment I knew this guy was really, really going to win it was when he went the complete game against the Dodgers. Unfortunately, he will not be going for Dontrell Willis's record of 7 complete games in one season, and it will not be the first since, I believe, AJ Burnett in 2005 to have back-to-back complete games. He wouldn't, as we all know, Flora was in, but I mentioned Charles LeBlanc, and I'll mention it here. Kevin Miller, he's part of the Fish Bros podcast, and I believe he was with 5 Reasons Sports this season to cover this series against the Chicago Cubs. He asked Charles LeBlanc about the possibility of playing for Team Canada. He would be playing along Freddie Freeman, and this is in quotes, "Nobody has reached out to me officially. I'd love to do it. I'm sure it'll happen." So we'll see if Charles LeBlanc will be another Marlins representative to join. But as the Zoom is winding down, it has 7 minutes left. We're gonna wrap it up here because we have a Miami Dolphins podcast to film. But John, you have one last thing you want to say here?
Yeah, man. Give it a shout out to Team Canada, Zach Pop, Charles LeBlanc, Joey Votto, and Freddie Freeman if they have the DH. Talking about a pretty good team there for Team Canada. So a little shout out there to CA.
So we'll have Sean for the Dolphins. John, obviously, will get his daily show going. So this will be part of that this week. We'll see you guys on the next one, whenever that will be. Hopefully that's off season, maybe. We'll see all 3 of us at least in the same panel. Definitely we'll have John at least once a week on here talking Marlins before you guys. Definitely stay tuned to his All Marlins podcast, Off Day, which I assume you'll be recording tomorrow. It is
Yes.
an off day. And then Sean, obviously, you could find his stuff on Call to the Pen. Great articles on there. He just released one on Braxton Garrett, I'm pretty sure. And you can just find his Dolphin recaps and previews and any articles that come up to his amazing mind on the KO Sports Corner website, which we link below. My name is Kevin Barral with John and Sean. We'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace out and go fish.